This is crushing your fear of rejection. Now, it's interesting. I thank you for taking the time and trouble to watch this video, because most people actually don't think they have a fear of rejection. They think they've got a fear of cold calling. They think they get nervous when they're asked to make a presentation or speak in public. Or maybe they get a bit of apprehension when they try and make a date with the man or woman of their dreams. But they don't think they've got a fear of rejection. That sounds all ominous and big and scary. But actually, when you really boil it down, when you take it down to its root cause, we don't have a fear of cold calling. We don't look at the phone and find the object inherently terrifying. We don't start to move our fingers on a dialer and suddenly get overwhelmed with apprehension because of the sensation of pressing the buttons. That's not really how it works. What we're afraid of is that when we speak to the other person that we're calling, they go, "No, how dare you call me? You're scum. Find another profession. You're a bad person." And that we'll get rejected by this stranger. It's not the fear of cold calling, it's a fear of rejection because we're cold calling. We don't inherently have a fear of standing up on our hind legs. We don't have a fear of talking to 2 or 3 or 5 people. We do it all the time. We sit in meetings and we talk. We hang out by the coffee machine and we talk. We go to a pub or a bar and we talk. We go onto social media and we talk. We just do it all the time. So it's not a fear of speaking to other people that we're afraid of. It's not even a fear of speaking to other people on our hind legs or into a camera that we're afraid of. What we're afraid of is the hallucination of people's potential reaction. So we're not afraid of something that is happening. We're afraid of something that might happen in the future, or we're afraid of something that might happen in the future because that's sort of how we remember it from the past. And in fact, our memory probably isn't that accurate, and it's an hallucination anyway. It hasn't happened yet. So by definition, it's some kind of weird fantasy in our heads. And we don't have a fear of speaking to people that we're attracted to. You probably do it all the time. You may have colleagues or friends or associates or social media contacts with whom you can be perfectly happy to talk. You're perfectly happy to have a chat. But when it comes to asking that person for a date, to spend time just with you in a romantic or pseudo-romantic setting, then the fear of rejection kicks in. And again, it's the hallucination of, well, what's going to go wrong? What if they say no? Well, what if they say yes? And I always think about this when I was a teenager, many moons ago, back in the Victorian era. I'd go with my friends on a Friday or Saturday night, or possibly a Tuesday night, and we were young, we were male. The avowed intention was to meet somebody and get a date with them. That was the purpose. In my case, because of the way I roll, I was trying to meet young women, and it always amazed me because I'm a bit of a freak. I would just have a look around, find the women that look most attractive, look like they might be the most interesting, look like they were going to be good to talk to, and I would just go up and say hello and introduce myself. And I know my limitations. Often I would just get crash and burn, and they'd just look at me and turn to their friends and walk away. But that was fine, because then I would go to somebody else. Whereas my friends would spend 2-3 hours necking down beers or gin and tonics, getting ready to suck up the Dutch courage to actually go and say hello to somebody, by which time the most attractive, interesting, smart, witty females had already either made a date with people like me, or left, or were too drunk to function themselves. So whilst my friends were much better looking than me, much more interesting, much more intelligent, witty and charming, I tended to end up on dates with the most wonderful women. So it was weird to me. I never really understood it. I didn't really question it. I was very happy with it. But looking back, it seemed a bit weird. And later on, when I moved into sales, and I moved into sales incidentally because I would talk to people. And I started to have a pretty decent amount of success very early on. Where the figures were coming in and I'd see myself on the league tables and life was great. But I couldn't really understand it because I knew that my colleagues were better at making presentations. They understood the industry more. They could solve people's problems better than I could. They were far more persuasive when it came to actually making a case or handling objections. And I couldn't really work out why I was having a greater level of success than they were. I didn't care at that stage, but I couldn't really work it out. And then it suddenly just popped into my head. It was such an obvious answer. I would make calls and they wouldn't. I would walk in the morning, grab a cup of coffee, start calling people. And then I'd call people. And then I'd call people, and then I'd have some lunch, and then I'd come back and I'd call people. In the meantime, my colleagues would, do a couple of emails, they'd write a letter, they'd look into some files, they'd chat with each other about how hard the market was. When they got to speak to a client, they were fantastic, they were way better than I was. But they didn't speak to anything like as many people as I did because I had something going on. My fear of missing out was and is greater than my fear of rejection, because my view on it was, I haven't got somebody's business when I'm here. Before I call them, I don't have somebody's business. If I call them and they tell me to go away, I still haven't got their business. So what have I lost? Well, nothing. As long as I'm not objectionable and as long as I'm not offensive, then there's literally nothing worse. Nothing's happened. And my fear of missing out on my bonuses, my dreams, my goals, the holidays, the lifestyle, the career that I wanted was consistently much bigger than any slight apprehension about what somebody might say on the phone or what somebody might say if I want to try to close the business too early. And that simple thing, once I taught it to a few of my friends and my colleagues, I started to move slightly backwards down the league tables because they started to go, okay, well, yeah, I actually don't lose anything. I don't miss out. And that was fine because we all succeeded. We all benefited because I'd helped them out. So when it came to make some presentations or put some proposals together, they would help me in return. So we all benefited. And that rising tide lifted all boats. I have to say, by the way, I never actually explained to my friends why I always ended up dating the most attractive and interesting women. I might not be the most attractive person in the world, but I'm not stupid. Fear of rejection is real. It has deep, deep roots in our evolutionary and societal history. Fear of rejection kept us alive for a very long time in our history. So it's in here deep, and it's in here at a very profound level. Let me explain where it come from and what it's about. Homo sapiens, human beings, compared to the rest of the animal kingdom, we're not big, we're not fast, we're not strong, we're not equipped with sharp claws or scary, powerful teeth like bears. So why are we so successful as a species? Well, we're so successful as a species because while we're not strong, fast, scary, we can cooperate. We can work together. And when human beings work together, they become powerful. They become effective. They become the alpha species on the planet. A single human being back in the day, cast out on their own in the African savanna or the polar tundra, they'd die in fairly short order. But together, safe, with a fire in our caves, with one group going out and hunting, another group gathering berries and roots and seeds, another group cooking and making those things into food for us. Maybe another group separately taking hides or plants and turning them into clothes that keep us warm and dry. That group is powerful and amazingly effective. And that is where our fear of rejection, our fear of not fitting in, comes from. Because as a group and as a member of that group, we're powerful, we're successful, and we're safe. If we get cast out from that group, if we're thrown out because we upset people, or we're too loud, or we pick arguments and fights, or we whatever, we're dead. Back in the day, we would be dead. So that fear of rejection, that need to fit in, that requirement to accommodate the norms of the group, whatever those social norms might be, we have this deep innate need, this deep innate desire to fit in. Some of us have it less than others, but it's still there. It's there for very practical, sound evolutionary reasons. It's not just something we pick up from our parents or our friends or from some experience in our past. It's real. It's innate. The people who got to breed, the people who survived, the people who are our ancestors are the ones who managed to fit in and cooperate with everybody else. So when we talk about these symptoms of fear of rejection, things like being terrified when we have to ask somebody for a price increase. Well, hang on, that's not anything to do with survival. That's not anything to do with whether we can eat tomorrow or stay warm at night. No, it's not. But in our lizard brains back here somewhere, in our simian ape ancestry, every time another person says no, every time another person knocks us back, every time another person goes, we have this fear that we're going to be rejected. So we ask somebody for a price increase and they go, no, how dare you? You're scum. I will never use your company ever again. And we go, okay, never mind. Well, actually, most people don't do that, do they? What most people do is they go, but actually, that's not even what most people do. What most people do is, rather than sucking it up and asking for the price increase, because if they get that price increase, they get the bonus and the promotion and the nice house and the nice car, and the kids go to a lovely school, instead of asking for the price increase, most people run this hallucination that the person they ask for a price increase is going to be offended and they're going to stop working with you, and you'll lose your job and you'll lose your house, and your kids won't talk to you, and your spouse will disappear off with somebody else, and you'll never get another job ever again, and at some point you're going to die lonely and alone and in pain. Sorry? I was only asking for a price increase and now I'm 50 years later dying alone and in pain. That's what happens that quickly. This fear of rejection is so deeply embedded, and it fits so tightly with our basic psychology, that the simple fear of asking for a price increase isn't a simple fear of asking for a price increase. It's a simple fear of all the things that might come from asking for that price increase. On a deep emotional level, we think about asking someone for a price increase, asking someone to take our proposal, asking someone for a meeting. And on a deep emotional level, our fear is that there will be terrible consequences from that. That's what we have a fear of, not the act, not the asking for a price increase or asking for a meeting or whatever else it might be. It's not that we're afraid of. It's the consequences of being rejected and thrown out from the group. That's what's really going on. And human beings' most fundamental, most crucial drive, even more important than staying within the group, is we seek pleasure and we avoid pain. So if we think that something is likely to cause us physical or emotional pain, we'll avoid it and we'll go and do something else instead, because even if that something else isn't particularly pleasurable, at least it's not painful, at least it's not unpleasant. So if we have a fear of making a cold call because we might get shouted at or told no or told to bugger off, we'll avoid that pain and we'll go and do a few DMs or put our filing in order, or do a few following or connections on LinkedIn, because that might not be pleasant, but it's not actively unpleasant. And that's as simple as our lizard brains get. We avoid pain and seek pleasure. And the way we learn to do that, I mean, the basic coding is hardwired into us as people. Infants, babies, avoid pain and seek pleasure. It's not something we learn. What we will learn is what causes pain and pleasure. And that is the secret, or one of the secrets. See, when we get a new situation, the way we will approach it is to go back into our mental or emotional memories and try and work out what this means. Does it mean pain or does it mean pleasure? When we get a new job in sales and we're asked to make cold calls, well, is making a cold call likely to give us pain because someone will shout at us, or is it likely to give us pleasure because we'll get more money and a promotion and a great house and a great job and the holidays that we want? And those associations that we make in advance based on our previous experience, or that we take because we've tried it in the past and it didn't work, they're still hallucinations. If we're imagining what's going to happen in the future, well, we're imagining it. If we're thinking, well, this happened in the past, so it's likely to happen in the future, we're still imagining it. It hasn't happened yet. But what happens is if we say, oh, this is a lot like, it's similar to, if we draw the conclusion of equivalence, oh, cold calling someone is a lot like asking someone for a date. We draw this equivalence of it. And if asking for somebody for a date was scary, then cold calling must be scary. If we've cold called people in the past and been shouted at, maybe we carry that emotional memory with us and picture it into the future. But the way memory works is it's slightly more complicated than that, because if you remember a negative situation, if you remember a problem you've had in the past, you don't just remember it, you don't just visualize it and hear it, you also feel it. And when you feel it, all the emotion comes back with it. So memories don't just come back as a video, they don't just come back as an audio file, they come back with all the feelings attached to it as well. So what tends to happen is stimulus, make cold calls. Stimulus, ask somebody for a price increase. Stimulus, ask somebody for the deal. Response, oh, well, they might say no, it'd be better if I just waited a while because they might not be in the right psychological mood for it. Or it might not be the right time of day, or I'm best cold calling on Tuesday. All of those are rationalizations that we put in the middle. Stimulus, response. That's fundamentally how people work. We make associations. This is going to happen, therefore it means this new thing. But we're people, we're humans. So whilst for a dog, a cat, a lizard, a spider, stimulus, response is a very sensible process. Hear something scary, run away. That's sensible. But we're human beings, so we can go stimulus, pause, think, wait, interpret, decide, response. We have the ability to put a gap between stimulus and response, and we have the ability to change what the response is. We have the intelligence and the will and the ability to make a choice about what we want this stimulus to mean. Let me think about, give you an example. If you've never made a presentation, if you've never spoken in public and nobody's told you that it's scary, and nobody's told you that there's a possibility you might get rejected or sneered at or laughed at or whatever it is that goes on in your head when you think about speaking in public. Well, if you have no negative associations, you're as likely to think, hey, if I get up and speak in public, I'll look fantastic and I'll be a superstar. That's as likely a reaction, that's as likely a response as, oh, I'm going to look stupid and people will laugh at me and I'll feel like a clown. Those two things are equally likely if you don't know, if you've had no experience and you've not been conditioned to think what the response is going to be. So what we can do is learn to decide, to make choices about what we're going to do. Just to turn aside for a second, shame is not the same as fear of rejection. Shame is there for the simple reason, shame is there to produce fear of rejection. So if you think back to something you did that got a negative reaction from somebody and you felt a bit embarrassed and you were blushing and it was all a bit awkward, well, that memory and the negative associations that come with it, those negative associations, the negative feelings are there so that you fear the same thing happening again. Well, let's get down to brass tacks. Why on earth would our brains want to induce shame so that we become afraid of doing something in the future? It's because our brains are there to keep us safe. The most basic, fundamental human drive, even above food and procreation, is staying safe. It's being alive. Because if you're not alive, well, you can't eat or procreate. So staying alive, survival, is the most innate human trait. And shame, which is remembering a past experience with negative emotions, produces fear of rejection because we don't want that experience again. So shame is not quite the same thing. Shame is a trigger to produce the response of fear of rejection. So they're not quite the same things. But that space between what happens and how we react to it is the opportunity that's unique to us as people. Let me just point something out that you might obviously know, but I just want to be clear about it for a second. Bravery is not the absence of fear. I mentioned earlier, I'm a bit of a freak. I don't really have the ability to fear speaking in public or people's reactions generally, because the way I'm wired is that, well, when somebody reacts, I'll just respond to it. That's just the way I'm wired. I'm not bothered about whether people say no or whether people get upset about something I say. I'm just wired to try and produce the best possible reaction from people. That's not to say I don't like people. I like people perfectly well. It's not to say I don't want people to like me. I do. But I don't have this fear of it, because my fear of missing out on opportunities, on great results, on lifestyle, on whatever it is I'm focused on, that fear of missing out is always massively bigger than that fear of rejection. And I know I'm lucky in that regard, but I do have the ability to show you how to adopt the same mental processes I do. I know how it works. I know how I work. And if you give me a phone and a number, I'll quite happily cold call the Queen of England, I'm fine with it. I don't care. I'll go up and talk to anybody. And it's a skill that I've developed, but it's also something that's quite innate within me. And I know I'm lucky, and I know it's unusual, but I've spent a long time working out how I do it so that I can pass that knowledge on. Where I came from with this is that doesn't make me brave. My willingness to pick up the phone 300 times in a row and be told to get stuffed, and then pick it up the 301st time with no hesitation, that doesn't make me brave. What makes you brave, as Susan Jeffers put it, a really good book, is if you have the ability to feel the fear and do it anyway. Feel the fear, acknowledge the fear, and then do it anyway. I don't know if you're a TV fan, but we've been on lockdown for a few months, and I've been re-watching one of my favourite programmes, which is Better Call Saul. And if you never watched it, do. It's just great. It's fantastic. It's actually much better than Breaking Bad, and I never thought I'd say that about anything. But Saul Goodman, who is the lead character, obviously, it's about his progression from being one kind of person to being a completely different kind of person. And Saul Goodman is a brave character. The character of Saul Goodman, he has stones, not because he's fearless. Saul Goodman is brave because he faces terrifying situations with horrifying, terrifying people like Gus Fring, Mike Ehrmantraut, the Mexican drug cartels. And he does it anyway. He's terrified. He shows he's terrified, but then he does what he has to anyway. That's bravery. And that's something that everybody can learn to a greater or lesser degree. Let me explain how you do it. There's a psychological methodology called cognitive and behavioural therapy. And what CBT is about is identifying the triggers, the stimulus, that causes a feeling or a thought process. And then once you've identified what makes you do something, or once you've identified what makes you feel something, you can either replace the trigger, which can work on occasion, but more often than not, you replace the response. So we learn that certain things mean certain things. So if we have something happen, or if we see something or hear something, then we do or feel or think this. So X happens, think, feel or do Y. And we learn that over time. And what cognitive and behavioural therapy is about is recognising that you've made that link, however you've made it. And then going, okay, well, next time this happens, next time X, I will do Z instead of Y. Next time X happens, Z, X, Z, X, Z, X, Z, until the new behaviour that you want instead, Z instead of Y, becomes automatic. Let me give you an example of this. What's a red light mean? Well, the chances are, unless you're living in Amsterdam, the chances are you thought, red light, stop. And that's a good, sensible, intelligent thing to think. If you're coming up to a set of traffic lights and you see red, you think stop. If you see a cooker hob and it's red hot, you think stop, don't go near it. But let me ask you a question. What does a red light on a TV mean? Now, if you're like most people, there was probably half a second or a second where you went, before you came up with the answer, power on or standby. Because red light equals stop, red light equals no, is a useful, intelligent piece of coding. It's a useful and intelligent piece of stimulus response. And when you have to think about that red light in a different context, it kicks you out of autopilot. And you go, oh, hang on, it means something else. Cognitive behavioural therapy says, okay, let's understand what the trigger is. Ignore why you've learned to do this, but let's learn to do something else instead. And then if you want to, we can come back and look at the why you did it in the first place, why you learned that behaviour. But the important thing is, understand what happens and then change it, and then practice and code it so it becomes automatic. Here's something I want you to think about before I go on to the next stage of this particular section. Everything you want but don't have yet is probably waiting for you on the far side of your fears. Let me say that one slowly again. Everything you want, everything you really desire, everything that would transform your life for the better is waiting for you on the far side of your fears. Because you can't get different unless you do different. So now we have to understand, okay, how do I do different? What's the first stage in the journey of beating my fear of rejection? How do I start the journey towards that better life that I want, I'm going to get? So let's look at the first two stages of learning to get past fear of rejection. The starting point for the first step is to look at what you can gain once you've put that fear of rejection behind you now. Look at what you're able to do, have, and be once you're on the far side of your fears. And just as an aside, even if you fail along the way, you still learn, and then you can do it better next time. It's like the idea of cold calling. Unless you're offensive, people are very unlikely to be offended. If you walk up to someone and you ask them for a date, and you're not rude, objectionable, and offensive about it, you're not burn any bridges. Maybe they'll say yes next time. Maybe you'll go off and find somebody else that's better for you. Maybe they just weren't meant to be in your life. But it hasn't killed you. Now, I'm not going to be Nietzschean about it and say if it doesn't kill you, it makes you strong. Well, it may or may not make you strong, but it certainly makes you a bit wiser. Wisdom comes from experience. Now, to follow that through, wisdom comes from experience comes from bad judgment. That's a whole different thing. But look at what you can gain. Look at what the opportunity is that's waiting for you. Think about that for a second. Let's take an example. Think of some social fear that you're aware of that's been holding you back. The thing that made you decide to download and watch this particular video set. I doubt it was because our adverts were so amazing you just bought it anyway on an impulse. Maybe you did, thank you. But more likely there was something in the back of your head that you thought, oh, actually it might help with whatever that thing is. Think about it for a second. Now, why do you want to get rid of that fear? Why do you want to get rid of that apprehension or that bit of nervousness? How will your life be better without that apprehension or that fear? How will your life be better without that nervousness? What will you get on the far side of your fear? Just think about it for a second. Make some notes if you want to. Pause if you need to. But just get really clear. What is it you want? What is it that fear was holding you back from? What was that fear stopping you from getting? think about what it is you want. Think about what you have to gain. Think about it in detail. Be specific. What have you got to gain once you're past that fear that was holding you back? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm with Mick Jagger on this. Sorry, Sir Mick Jagger. You can't always get what you want, but if you try, sometimes you might get what you need. I don't often quote the Rolling Stones, but that'll do. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever been afraid of something and done it anyway? Of course you have. We all have. And I'll tell you what, I bet some of your best memories, some of your best experiences, possibly even your best relationships have come from feeling the fear and doing it anyway. Because what you wanted, the meeting, the business, the deal, the date with the person, whatever it was, that result was more powerful and stronger than the niggly apprehension and fear that was holding you back. Let me give you a silly example. People have a fear of talking to video cameras. They have a fear of speaking in public. Let's say you've got to make a presentation. You've got to make a presentation to 40 people, total strangers. Some of them have great big job titles, big offices, fancy cars, whatever it is that haunts your dreams, haunts your nightmares. Just think about it for a second. You're about to stand up or go on a Zoom call and you're going to pitch and make a speech, speak in public to 50 strangers. Now, if it goes well, you get all the things that you wanted in your life. You get the job, the money, the career, the house, the security, the safety, the excitement, whatever it is that your dreams are about. And if it goes wrong, you'll feel a bit awkward and you'll blush. Well, hang on. You can have everything you want, but what's holding you back is that you're afraid you'll blush. You can have all your dreams come true, but you might feel a bit warmer, feel a bit blushy, and it might be a bit awkward. Now, I know that sounds ridiculous. I know it does. But you'd be amazed how many people do it. Not you, obviously. But, them. People think like that all the time. They make decisions based on, I feel a bit awkward. It might be embarrassing. Yeah. But maybe it won't be. And maybe it'll go swimmingly, and maybe you'll be a superstar, and maybe you'll end up on TV, and maybe you'll be a celebrity, and maybe you'll be all the things that you could have, be, and do. When you can get past that niggly sort of feeling of apprehension, or when you can get past the butterflies, or when you can get past the fear of blushing, which is amazingly common, by the way. You'd be amazed how many people are terrified of blushing in front of other people. They stop themselves from doing the things that will get them towards their dreams because they're going to feel a bit hot and they might start sweating. I know it doesn't sound sensible, but people aren't necessarily logical. There's always a rational reason for things if you dig back far enough, but it doesn't always make sense. So think about it for a second. How will your life be better? What will you be? What will you have? What will you do when you've put that fear behind you? Think about what that will mean to you. And just think about it and feel it. Take it on board until the fear of missing out on that overwhelms the fear of rejection that was holding you back. And bear in mind, not choosing is a choice. If you choose not to push through, if you choose to focus on your apprehension, on your nervousness, instead of your dreams and your goals, that's a choice. Yes, there's a bit of automated process in there, and we'll look at that in a second. But not choosing is making a choice. Just think about that for a second. Not choosing is a choice. So imagine that you're looking back, and you're looking back on a situation, and you could have done something, or you could have done something repeatedly over a period of time. You could have chosen, you could have made a choice, and you could have changed what you do. But you were a bit afraid of blushing, or you were a bit afraid of feeling awkward, or you were a bit afraid of looking like an idiot. You could have had everything you wanted in your life, but, you know, I'm feeling a bit weird about it. That isn't really me. What would you say to a friend who made that choice? Let's imagine that you've got to ask somebody for a price increase. You've got to go into somebody and say, okay, it's been great working with you for the past 3 years, but we need to increase our prices by 10% because. Now, some of you will have the cold sweats just thinking about it. Some of you will go, whatever. But some of you, a big chunk of people will be going, ooh, hang on. And they'll be thinking of all the reasons why they shouldn't. Oh, it's the wrong time, I might upset them, we're in a very competitive market, our service or business is exactly like everybody else's, so they'll just go to somebody else. All that stuff, those rationalizations that we use. You know, rationalizations. Think about it for a second. What would you say to a friend who, if they'd asked for a price increase, could have changed their life forever? If asking for a price increase from their biggest customer either transformed their business from breaking even to making a profit, or it changed their career, they got the promotion, they got the money, they got the career that they wanted. If you were talking to one of your friends and they were in that situation, if you're talking to a friend and they go, oh, I've got to ask this big customer for a price increase, but I'm a bit nervous about how they'll respond, what would you say to them? And I bet 9 times out of 10, I bet you'd just say, suck it up, go off and do it anyway. Hey, what's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is you stay where you are. Go and ask them for a price increase. The worst that can happen is they say no. Isn't that what you'd say to a friend? Well, why don't you be your own friend? Why not be as good to yourself as you would be to other people? Turn off your autopilot. Make a choice. Get your fear of missing out and grow it. And as you grow your fear of missing out, you'll automatically reduce the fear of rejection. It will overwhelm the fear of rejection. Getting excited about what you want will become much more impactful and significant than the niggling, slight apprehensions about the other stuff. That was the first stage. The first step is to make your fear of missing out on your dreams and goals bigger than your fear of feeling a bit awkward or your fear of doing something new and different. That's the first step. The second step is turn off the autopilot. Oh, sorry, autopilot, what do you mean? We all have these automated responses. We all have things that we do automatically without thinking about it. I gave you the example earlier on of red light means. Okay. But we have all sorts of different examples. A simple example. Hopefully you're not driving while you're watching this video, so this should be safe to do. Just get your arms and cross them for a second. Okay. Now, have a look down and see which arm's on top. By definition, it's either your right arm on top or your left arm on top. When I was doing face-to-face training, I used to do this whole shtick about how one thing meant one thing and one thing meant another. There's no significance to which arm's on top. It's not even anything to do with whether you're left-handed or right-handed. But whichever arm was on top, cross them the other way. If your right arm was on top, put the left. If the left was on top, put the right on top. And chances are, you probably have to think really hard in order to do it. You're probably there at the moment going, and even when you do get your arms folded the other way, it feels weird. It's just not right, is it? Well, that's because the other arm is evil, it's wrong, it's bad. No, it's just because you've crossed your arms a lot during the time you've been alive. And the more you do something, the more habitual it becomes. Practice might not make perfect, but it does make habits. And habits are what makes us. The things we do on autopilot, the things we do habitually, the things that we do, the things that we feel, the things that we think about, are what controls the vast majority, certainly more than 90% of what we do day to day. So here's what we have to do. Think about some social fear. Think about a fear of cold calling, a fear of speaking in public, a fear of asking for a price increase, a fear of asking for the deal, a fear of asking somebody for a date, a fear of whatever it might be. Okay? And when you think about that, something happens internally. You get some kind of feeling. Or you think about doing something like running away, hiding in a cupboard, going into a cold shower, getting in the car and driving to Alaska, whatever it may be. But that automatic process, that's just your autopilot speaking. There are lots of different ways to address that, but the simplest is this. The moment you feel, the moment you notice the stimulus, the moment you go, okay, I'm going to have to speak in public. Okay, I'm going to have to lead this Zoom call and make a pitch. Or, okay, I need to go and ask for the deal. It's time to get this deal done. As you start to get the nervousness, the apprehension, the hallucination of all the things that might happen, stop, take a breath, literally. And then think about what you want instead. So instead of, oh, well, I might look like an idiot, think, yeah, but it might go great, and I might get the promotion, and I might get the deal, and I might get this, I might get that, I'll get the other. Next time it happens, oh, I'm a bit nuts. What do I want instead? What am I here for? Why am I doing this? What do I want to have, be, or do? What am I afraid of missing out on? What is my fear stopping me from getting, or having, or being? Fine. Stimulus, choice. Stimulus, choice. Thought, choice. Thing happens, choose. And the more you choose, the more you create the new habit. Now, let me give you a silly example. Just while we're watching the video, just while you're watching me, just cross and uncross your arms. The new way, the wrong way. Not the old way, the new way. Just cross them 10 times, really quickly. Okay, stop for a second. Cross them right on the top, then left, then right, then left, then right, then left. Do it really quickly. Do it now. Go. Right, left, 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 right, left. Now stop and put the wrong, evil, bad arm on top. And if I've done this correctly, the chances are it doesn't feel as bad as it used to. In fact, it might even just feel like an arm, or in some cases, you might not even be able to remember which arm was the bad one to start with. Oh, you've got a new habit. How profound. You've made a change in your life. You'll instantly be better and richer and more successful and more beautiful and attractive and charming than you already were. No, you'll go back to the other arm automatically anyway, because you haven't drilled the habit yet. You've started, but you haven't followed through yet. Repetition is the mother of skill. Repetition is also the mother of a new habit. And here's how to make it stick. When you start thinking about the thing that used to scare you, when you start thinking about the thing that made you apprehensive, take a breath in, let it go, and think about what you want. Think about why you're doing this. Think about what your goals, dreams, and ambitions are, and then think about how you want it to go. Instead of looking embarrassed, what do you want to happen? Instead of being told to bugger off, what do you want to happen? What is it you want? How's it going to go? What's it going to work like? Rehearse it in your head. Think about what you want and how good that's going to make you feel. Then plan your action. So here's what happens. The stimulus comes in. The thing comes in. You've got to make a presentation. You have to ask for a price increase. You've got to ask for the deal. You're about to make some cold calls. Whatever it may be, whatever your social fear was. Take a breath. Think about all the things you want in your life and all the things that doing this could get you. Think about them. Feel them. Now plan and rehearse in your head. How are you going to do it? How's it going to go? What's it going to look like when it goes perfectly? How's it going to feel when it goes perfectly? What will you see, hear, and feel when everything goes exactly the way you want it to? Think about it, think about it. Do it. And keep practicing that. Keep rehearsing that until it becomes the new habit. I'd be amazed how fast that can be. If you put enough emotion into the desired behavior, if you feel fantastic when you're thinking about what you want to do, feel fantastic, think about what you want to do. Feel fantastic, think about what you want to do. Feel fantastic, think about what you want to do. Think about what you want to do, feel fantastic. That's how simple we human beings are. And if you feel fantastic about doing it, well, you won't feel nervous or apprehensive about it. That's as simple as we people are. We human beings aren't complicated. We do amazing things, but we do them in really simple ways. The most important thing is think. Use what's between your ears to control what's in your heart. Use your brain to control your emotions, not the other way around. Think. If the reward is greater than the risk, just do it. If you make a cold call and somebody tells you to bugger off, you're still alive, you've not lost anything. Okay. But if they say, yes, come and see me and have this £1 million order, whee! If the reward is greater than the risk, do it. I know it sounds simplistic. Simplistic is not necessarily simple. It's actually very profound, but it's an approach that works because it's easy. I'm sure that you might want to watch this video back a couple of times just to get your head around the processes. But fundamentally, there's two things I'm recommending from this. The first is make what you want more powerful than what you fear. Make your fear of missing out greater than your fear of rejection. And then secondly, when you come to think about cold calling, when you come to think about speaking in public, when you come to think about doing a deal, pause for a second. Think about what it will mean when it goes right. Think about what it will mean when everything's gone perfectly. What will you get? What will you gain? What will you be, have, or do because it goes well? And then plan exactly what you're going to do. Imagine it going perfectly. Imagine exactly how you want it to go. Think about it, pause, imagine how well it's going to go, think about how that's going to make you feel, and think about what you'll gain from it. So those two processes make your FOMO bigger than your FOR, and stop and think about what you want instead. I know this sounds simple, but my goodness, they're powerful.